Beloved, someone tried to harm your future, but they failed. Pause right there. Did you feel that sudden stillness in your chest, like something unseen just shifted? That wasn't your imagination, dear one. What was meant to block you has already been intercepted. And what you thought was a delay was actually protection. Stay with me, because in a moment I'll reveal who stood in that unseen space on your behalf, and what has already changed around you. Right now, there are two realities touching your life. One was designed to confuse you, to slow you, to quietly drain your direction. The other is moving with precision, shielding you, redirecting you, preparing something you cannot yet fully see. And you are standing between them in this moment. That tension you felt recently, that heaviness, that question you couldn't quite name? It wasn't random. It was the evidence of an attempt, and a divine interruption. Listen closely. If you had not been covered, something would have unfolded differently. But it didn't. You are still here, still moving, still being guided. So don't scroll away, don't dismiss this as coincidence. If this is reaching you, it means you were meant to hear it now. Take a breath, feel the stillness around you. If something inside you is saying, "This is for me," I want you to acknowledge it. You can even type, "I'm listening," below, not for me, but as a signal of your awareness. Because in the next moment, now that you've made it this far, you need to hear this clearly, dear one, you didn't find this message found you. Out of all the noise, all the distractions, all the things you could have been doing right now, you were led here. That is not random. That is not algorithm. That is alignment. Child of God, something in your spirit recognized this before your mind could explain it. That quiet pull, that subtle pause, that feeling of, wait. I need to listen to this, that was not accidental. You have been guided into this moment with intention. Think back over the last few days. The uneasiness you couldn't quite name. The delays that didn't make sense. Plans shifting, conversations feeling off, doors that should have opened, but didn't. And then those moments of stillness, unexpected, almost too quiet, like everything paused for a second. You felt it, didn't you? Some of you even had dreams that lingered longer than usual. Not always clear, not always dramatic, but different. Symbolic. Heavy. Or maybe you woke up with a feeling you couldn't shake. That wasn't your imagination, beloved. That was your spirit picking up on something your physical senses couldn't fully process yet. And here's where the contrast begins to reveal itself. On one side, it could all look like coincidence, just a bad week, just stress, just overthinking. But on the other side, there is a pattern. A divine orchestration moving quietly beneath the surface, aligning moments, redirecting paths, shielding you in ways you didn't even notice. You are not overlooked. You are not forgotten. You are not just drifting through random events. You are seen. You are known. And more than that, you are being actively protected, even when you don't feel it. Stay with me, because in a moment, I'm going to reveal what was actually sent against you, and why it didn't work. That part matters more than you think. But first, I need you to settle into this truth. You are here on purpose. This message is not chasing the masses, it is reaching the one who is ready to hear it. And right now, that one is you. If something in your spirit is confirming this, don't ignore it. Don't brush it off like you've done before when something felt too specific or too timely. This is where clarity begins, when you stop dismissing what resonates deeply. Go ahead, if you feel aligned, quietly type, "I receive." Not out of pressure, but as a moment of agreement. A small, intentional step that says, "I'm paying attention. I'm open." Because what's coming next will bring understanding to everything that felt confusing. And once you see it clearly, you won't be able to unsee it. Now that you've opened your heart to this, we need to go deeper, because not every delay you experienced was innocent. Dear one, some of what slowed you down was intentional. Not always loud, not always obvious, but precise. Subtle disruptions, misaligned conversations, opportunities that slipped just out of reach at the last second. It wasn't all coincidence. And I say this with care, not to create fear, but to bring clarity. Because when you understand what was happening, you stop blaming yourself for things that were never yours to carry. There are moments when confusion tries to settle over you like a fog, when your thoughts feel scattered, when your energy drains faster than usual. That is not always just fatigue. Sometimes, it is interference. But listen closely, you were never left unprotected. What was sent against you did not land the way it was intended to. It was intercepted, redirected, weakened before it could fully reach you. That is why you felt pressure without collapse. That is why things felt off, but never completely broken. Still, the stakes are real. If left unrecognized, these patterns can repeat. Confusion can lead to hesitation. Hesitation can lead to missed timing. And missed timing can feel like loss, even when it isn't permanent. That's how subtle disruption works, not by destroying everything at once, but by slowly pulling you out of alignment. But here is where everything shifts. The next 72 hours are crucial. Not because something negative is about to happen, but because something is being revealed. There is a window opening, a moment where clarity will begin to replace confusion, where what felt hidden starts to make sense. And how you respond in this window matters. You can remain unaware, brushing off the signs, staying in that quiet fog of uncertainty. Or you can become alert, present, and aligned with what is being shown to you. One path keeps you circling the same questions. The other moves you into understanding and direction. And I need you to stay with me here, because there's one sign you must not ignore. I'll explain it shortly. It may come gently, not in a dramatic way, but in a way that feels unmistakably clear when you pause long enough to notice. You are not alone in this moment. Even now, there is a covering around you. What could have overwhelmed you was held back. What could have misled you was slowed down. You were given space, space to see, space to discern, space to realign. So don't rush past this. Don't dismiss what you've been feeling. The tension had a purpose. The delays had a reason. And the protection you experienced, even without realizing it, is about to become clearer than ever. Because in the next part, you're going to understand where this interference was coming from, and why it had to be revealed now. Now that you're beginning to see that something wasn't right, we need to gently uncover where this interference was actually moving through. And dear one, this part requires your attention, not fear, not suspicion, but awareness. Because what affected you was not always distant or obvious. It moved quietly, sometimes through what felt familiar. Not everything that feels close is aligned. Not every voice that sounds supportive carries the right intention. And not every environment that looks comfortable is actually safe for your spirit. Think about the moments that left you feeling slightly drained without a clear reason. Conversations where you walked away heavier than when you arrived. Situations where your clarity seemed to blur, where decisions that once felt simple suddenly became complicated. That subtle pressure, that quiet confusion, it didn't just appear out of nowhere. This is how hidden conflict works. It doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always come with clear warning signs. Sometimes it blends into your normal, disguising itself as routine, as familiarity, as something you've simply learned to tolerate. But your spirit noticed. That hesitation you felt around certain people or spaces, that pause before responding, that inner nudge saying, something feels off, even when everything looked fine on the surface, that was discernment trying to reach you. Not fear. Not overthinking. Discernment. And here is the contrast you must understand. When something remains hidden, it keeps you comfortable, but unclear. You continue engaging, trusting, moving forward without seeing the full picture. But when it begins to be revealed, it may feel uncomfortable at first, but it brings clarity. It brings truth. It restores your ability to choose wisely. You were never meant to stay blind just to keep things easy. Some of what you experienced was not direct harm, but misalignment. Energy that didn't support where you're being led. Words that subtly redirected your focus. Patterns that kept repeating, not because you failed, but because something around you wasn't aligned with your direction. And yet, even in that, you were protected. What could have pulled you further off course didn't succeed. What could have created deeper confusion was limited. You were allowed to feel enough to question it, but not enough to lose yourself in it. That is not weakness, that is covering. Pause for a moment and reflect. There were times you almost made a decision, almost committed, almost stepped fully into something, but something held you back. At the time, it may have felt frustrating. Like delay. Like uncertainty. But now you're starting to see, that pause may have been protection. This is not about blaming anyone. This is not about pointing fingers or creating distance out of fear. This is about awareness. Because once you see clearly, you no longer move blindly. You begin to recognize what aligns with peace and what subtly disrupts it. And here's the truth you need to hold on to: what was hidden is now being brought into the light, not to harm you, but to protect you. You are not being exposed to confusion again. You are being led out of it. You'll soon understand why this had to be exposed now, why this moment of clarity couldn't come earlier, and why everything you felt was leading you here. Because in the next part, something shifts. The weight you've been carrying begins to lift as you realize this was never about you being weak, it was always about you being chosen. Now that you've seen what was hidden, let your spirit settle for a moment, because this is where everything begins to soften. Dear one, hear this clearly, not just with your mind, but deep within your heart: you are chosen, not cursed. You are protected, not abandoned. What you went through was not a sign of your weakness. It was a sign of your significance. Take a breath right now. Let it be slow. Let it be steady. Because the tension you've been carrying was never meant to define you. It was only passing through, not taking root. You may have questioned yourself recently. Wondered if you missed something, if you made the wrong move, if somehow you allowed things to go off track. But that is not your identity. You are not the mistake. You are not the delay. You are not the confusion you felt. Those were moments, not your meaning. In fact, the very reason you felt resistance is because of what you carry. There is something about your presence, your path, your calling that cannot move unnoticed. Light always draws attention. And sometimes, that attention comes with pressure, not to destroy you, but because what you carry matters. Do you see the shift? What once felt like something working against you now begins to reveal itself as confirmation that your life is not random. That your direction holds weight. That your future carries purpose. If nothing about you mattered, there would be no resistance. No interference. No subtle attempts to redirect you. But there were. And yet, they did not succeed. That is where your reassurance lives. You are still standing. Still moving. Still being guided. Not because everything around you was perfect, but because you were covered through it. Let that truth replace the doubt. There were moments you felt alone, moments where clarity seemed distant, where you wondered if anyone truly saw what you were going through. But even in those quiet spaces, you were not abandoned. There was protection you couldn't see, alignment happening beyond your awareness, decisions being influenced in your favor without you even realizing it. This is not about fear anymore. This is about identity. You are not someone who narrowly escaped something by chance. You are someone who was intentionally shielded because your path matters. Because your life is being preserved for something meaningful. And now, instead of shrinking back, instead of questioning your worth, you are being invited to step into that truth with confidence. Place your hand over your heart for a moment. Feel that steady rhythm. That is life. That is presence. That is proof that you are still here, still chosen, still moving forward. If this resonates with you, you can quietly affirm it. You can type, "I am chosen, not for anyone else, but as a declaration within yourself." A shift from doubt into clarity. Because what comes next will restore what felt lost. It will bring back what seemed delayed. It will reconnect you with a sense of direction that feels steady again. And in the next part, you'll see the difference clearly, the path that leads to continued confusion, and the one that leads to alignment and peace. Now that you've felt that truth settle within you, you're standing at a quiet but powerful turning point. Not dramatic on the outside, but deeply significant within. Dear one, this is where awareness becomes choice. There are two paths in front of you right now. Not in a distant future, not someday, right here, in this moment. The first path is easy to slip into because it feels familiar. It's the path of ignoring the nudge. Brushing off what you felt. Telling yourself it was just emotion, just a passing thought, just another moment that doesn't need your attention. And if you go that way, life doesn't collapse, but it stays unclear. You wake up with that same subtle heaviness. Conversations feel slightly off, but you push through. Decisions take longer than they should because something inside you hesitates, but you can't explain why. It's like walking through a room filled with quiet noise, nothing loud enough to stop you, but constant enough to distract you. On this path, patterns repeat. Not because you're failing, but because you're not fully seeing. Opportunities may still come, but they feel uncertain. Direction exists, but it's clouded. You keep moving, but without that sense of peace that tells you you're aligned. It's not chaos. It's something more subtle than that. It's disconnection. Now, the second path is different. It may feel quieter at first, even unfamiliar, because it asks you to pause, to listen, to trust what your spirit is already showing you. When you receive this message, truly receive it, you begin to notice a shift. The heaviness starts to lift, not all at once, but gently, like a weight you didn't realize you were carrying being set down. Your thoughts begin to settle. That constant inner noise softens into something clearer. You start recognizing what feels right and what doesn't without overanalyzing. Conversations become easier to read. Decisions feel steadier, even if they require courage. There is a sense of stillness that replaces the confusion, a quiet confidence that says, "I know where I stand." This is alignment. It doesn't mean everything becomes perfect overnight. But it means you are no longer moving blindly. You are aware. You are present. You are connected to something deeper than circumstance. And here's the truth, you get to choose which path you step into. Not by force. Not by pressure. But by awareness. Ignoring keeps you in cycles you can't fully understand. Receiving brings you into clarity you can actually move with. So pause right here with me. Feel the difference between those two paths. One feels heavy, uncertain, slightly draining. The other feels calm, steady, quietly empowering. If you're ready to lean into that second path, you can acknowledge it in a simple way. You can type, "I am ready," or "I receive clarity." Not as a performance, but as a moment of alignment within yourself. Because once you choose awareness, things begin to shift faster than you expect. And stay with me, because in the next section, I'm going to show you exactly what begins shifting within days, what you'll notice, what will change, and how you'll recognize that you've stepped into alignment. Now that you've made that inner choice, stay close here, because this is where things begin to unfold in a way you can actually recognize. Not all at once, not in chaos, but in order. Quiet, steady, undeniable shifts that meet you right where you are. Let's begin with the next 72 hours. In this first window, the changes may feel subtle, but they are significant. You may notice a release, emotionally, mentally, even physically. Something that felt tight begins to loosen. Thoughts that once circled without answers start to settle. You might find yourself pausing more, reflecting differently, sensing a kind of calm that wasn't there before. Watch for this sign, a moment of unexpected clarity. It could come in silence, in a conversation, or even in something small that suddenly makes sense. That is not random. That is alignment beginning. You may also notice protection in ways you didn't expect. A plan shifts. A delay happens again, but this time, it feels different. Instead of frustration, there's a quiet sense that it's working for you, not against you. Pay attention to what doesn't happen as much as what does. Sometimes protection looks like what never fully unfolds. Now, as you move into the next 7 days, the shift becomes more visible. This is where things begin to reconnect. Communication that felt blocked may start to open. Not always dramatically, but enough for you to see movement. Conversations become clearer. People reveal more than they intended, or situations begin to show their true nature without you having to chase answers. Opportunities may appear, but they will feel different from before. Instead of confusion, there will be a sense of recognition. Something inside you will say, "This feels right," even if it requires a step of trust. And here's another sign to watch for: peace in places that once felt uncertain. Not because everything is resolved, but because you are no longer carrying the same internal weight. You're seeing more clearly, and that clarity brings calm. This is the contrast unfolding. What once felt scattered begins to organize itself. What once felt heavy begins to lift. Not because the world changed overnight, but because your alignment is changing how you move through it. Then we reach the next 14 days. This is where the shift becomes undeniable. By this point, you'll begin to see results, visible, tangible movement in areas that once felt stuck. It could be a decision that finally feels clear. A door opening that had previously remained closed. A sense of direction returning in a way that feels steady, not forced. Your confidence begins to rebuild, not from external validation, but from internal clarity. You trust your discernment more. You recognize patterns faster. You no longer second-guess every step, because you've seen what happens when you stay aligned. Watch closely here. Something that once confused you will now make complete sense. You'll look back and realize why certain things didn't work, why certain delays had to happen, why certain connections shifted. That understanding will not bring frustration, it will bring peace. This is breakthrough, but not in a way that overwhelms you. It unfolds in a way that you can carry, that you can sustain, that you can build on. And throughout all of this, remain grounded. Stay attentive to what you feel, not just what you see. Don't rush ahead of the process. The clarity is coming in layers, and each layer matters. Because this is not about sudden change without understanding. This is about aligned movement, step by step, moment by moment. And in the next section, I'm going to guide you through exactly how to stay protected and discerning as this unfolds, so you don't slip back into confusion, and you continue moving forward with clarity and peace. Now that you can see how things are beginning to shift, this is where your role becomes active. Not in pressure, not in fear, but in awareness. Dear one, you are not just being protected, you are being taught how to remain protected. This is where discernment replaces reaction. Start with something simple, something you may have overlooked before: stillness. Not long, complicated moments, just small pauses throughout your day. A breath before you respond. A moment of quiet before you decide. Because clarity doesn't shout. It settles. When you rush, you react. And reaction often comes from confusion or emotion. But when you pause, even briefly, you give yourself space to notice what is actually present. Is this bringing peace, or is it creating pressure? Is this aligned, or does it feel forced? Your body already knows the difference. That subtle tightening in your chest, that quiet unease, that sense of being slightly off, that is not something to ignore anymore. And on the other side, that calm, steady feeling, even in uncertainty, that is something to trust. This is how you begin to move differently. Pay attention to what drains you. Not in a dramatic way, but in the small, repeated ways. The conversations that leave you feeling unsettled. The environments where your clarity fades. The patterns that keep pulling you back into confusion. You don't need to judge them. You don't need to fight them. You simply need to recognize them. Because once you recognize them, you can choose differently. And then notice what restores you. What brings a sense of peace, even if it's quiet. What helps you think clearly again. What feels steady, not overwhelming. These are your indicators. Your internal guidance is becoming sharper, but only if you listen to it. This is not about becoming distant or guarded in fear. This is about becoming present and aware. There is a difference between fear and discernment. Fear rushes, tightens, and reacts quickly. Discernment observes, pauses, and responds with calm authority. Fear makes everything feel urgent and overwhelming. Discernment brings a quiet knowing, even when the situation is uncertain. You are being invited into that calm authority. And alongside this awareness, return to simple spiritual grounding. It doesn't need to be complicated. A quiet prayer in your own words. A moment where you close your eyes and center yourself. A simple acknowledgement, guide me. Keep me clear. Keep me aligned. You don't have to say it perfectly. You don't have to feel anything dramatic. What matters is consistency, not intensity. As you do this, you may notice something else begin to happen. Situations that once confused you become easier to understand. People reveal themselves more clearly. Decisions that once felt overwhelming begin to feel manageable. Not because everything around you changed, but because you are no longer approaching it the same way. And when something doesn't feel right, you don't need to force yourself to stay in it just to avoid discomfort. Discomfort is not always a sign to push through. Sometimes, it's a signal to step back and reassess. Give yourself permission to do that. You are not here to prove anything. You are here to move in alignment. So take your time. Notice the shifts. Trust what feels steady. Release what feels forced. And remember, protection is not always loud. Most of the time, it is quiet, consistent, and deeply present. You are learning how to walk with that protection, not just depend on it. And stay with me, because in the next section, we're going to seal this together, through a moment that will anchor everything you've just received into something you can carry forward with peace and confidence. Now that you've come this far, don't rush past this moment. This is where everything settles, where what you've heard becomes something you can carry. So gently, wherever you are, allow yourself to slow down. If you can, close your eyes. Take a deep breath in, and release it slowly. Let your shoulders soften. Let your thoughts quiet, even just a little. Beloved, we step into this moment together. Heavenly Father, we come before you with open hearts. Not in fear, not in confusion, but in quiet trust. You see this soul listening right now. You know every moment they've walked through, every question they've carried, every weight they didn't have words for. And right now, we ask for your peace to settle over them. Let it come gently, like warmth spreading through their chest. Let it quiet the noise that tried to surround them. Let it replace every lingering doubt with a steady sense of calm. Dear one, just breathe that in. You are not alone. You were never alone. Father, we thank you for the protection that was already placed around them. For every unseen interception, for every moment something was stopped before it could reach them fully. Even when they didn't realize it, you were there. And we acknowledge that now with gratitude. Say it quietly in your spirit if you can, thank you for protecting me. Let that truth settle. Now, we speak clarity over your mind. Every place that felt scattered, every thought that felt unclear, we ask for alignment. Let understanding begin to rise gently, not all at once, but in the exact way you can receive it. No more confusion that lingers without purpose. No more cycles that repeat without awareness. Instead, we declare clarity. Say it softly within yourself, I receive clarity. Feel that shift. And now, we speak peace over your heart. Every place that held tension, every moment that felt uncertain, we release it. Not by force, not by struggle, but by surrender. Peace is not something you have to chase. It is something that meets you when you allow it. Let it settle over you now, steady, quiet, real. We declare that what was meant to harm you has no authority over your future. It does not define you. It does not follow you. It has already been stopped. And what remains is what is aligned for you. Say this gently, I am protected. Feel the weight of that, not heavy, but grounding. You are covered. You are guided. You are not walking through this life without direction. Now we speak restoration. Everything that felt delayed, everything that seemed out of reach, we place it back into your hands, Father. Not with urgency, but with trust. Restore what needs to be restored. Align what needs to be aligned. Bring back what belongs, and remove what does not. And let it happen in peace. Dear one, notice the difference. Earlier there may have been tension, uncertainty, questions without answers. But right now, there is stillness. There is space. There is a quiet knowing beginning to form. This is where fear loses its hold. This is where you remember who you are. You are not overwhelmed. You are not lost. You are not behind. You are guided. Take one more slow breath. Let it go gently. And if this moment resonated with you, if you felt that calm, that shift, that sense of being held, you can seal it in your own way. You can simply say, Amen, or I receive. Not as a habit, but as a moment of agreement. A quiet yes within your spirit. Because what you've just stepped into is not temporary. It's something you can return to, something you can carry forward. And stay with me, because in the next part, you're going to begin to see what this restoration actually looks like in your life, how it touches your relationships, your path, your sense of purpose in ways you may not expect. Now that you've felt that peace settle within you, stay here for a moment, because this is where you begin to see forward. Not through fear, not through uncertainty, but through quiet vision. Dear one, what was delayed in your life was never denied. It was being protected, refined, and aligned for the right moment. And that moment is beginning to unfold. Let's start with your inner world, your sense of home within yourself. Where there was once tension, overthinking, and emotional exhaustion, something new begins to take shape. You wake up with a little more steadiness. Your thoughts don't rush as quickly. That constant pressure you carried starts to fade into the background. You begin to feel at home within yourself again. Not because everything around you is perfect, but because you are no longer disconnected from your own peace. That is restoration at its core, returning to a place where your spirit feels grounded, steady, and clear. And from that place, your relationships begin to shift. You may notice that certain connections feel lighter, easier, more honest. Conversations begin to carry clarity instead of confusion. You no longer feel the need to over-explain yourself or chase understanding. What aligns with you begins to meet you naturally. And what doesn't align? It gently falls away or becomes clear without struggle. This is not loss, it is refinement. Where there was once uncertainty in your connections, there is now discernment. Where there was emotional drain, there is now balance. You are not surrounded by confusion anymore, you are surrounded by clarity. Now let's talk about your purpose. For a while, it may have felt like you were paused, like your direction was unclear, like you were waiting for something to make sense. But what you didn't see was that things were being positioned behind the scenes. As restoration unfolds, you begin to feel that sense of direction return. Not as pressure, not as urgency, but as quiet knowing. You start recognizing where your energy flows naturally. What once felt forced begins to release, and what is meant for you begins to feel accessible again. You don't have to chase it the same way anymore. You begin to move with it. And then there is provision. This is where many people feel the most tension, the question of stability, of resources, of whether things will come together. But here's what you need to understand: provision follows alignment. When you are moving in clarity, when you are no longer being pulled in directions that drain you, what you need begins to meet you differently. Opportunities come with less confusion. Decisions carry less weight. You begin to trust the timing of things, instead of fearing that you've missed it. This doesn't mean everything appears instantly. But it does mean that what comes is steady, sustainable, and right for you. That is the difference between rushing into something out of fear, and receiving something out of alignment. And as all of this unfolds, your inner peace, your relationships, your purpose, your provision, you begin to notice something deeper. You are no longer operating from emptiness. You are no longer trying to fill gaps or fix what feels broken. You are moving from a place of fullness, even if it's still growing. This is restoration. Not loud. Not overwhelming. But real. And here's the contrast. Before, things may have felt scattered, uncertain, slightly out of reach. Now, there is a sense of order forming. A quiet unfolding. A feeling that things are beginning to come together, even if step by step. You are not going backward. You are not starting over. You are moving forward, with clarity you didn't have before. Hold on to that. Because there's one final thing you must remember moving forward, something simple but powerful that will keep you grounded in everything that's unfolding. And in the next part, we're going to bring this into a moment of commitment, where you choose to stay aligned, supported, and connected as this continues to unfold. Now that you can see where things are heading, this is a moment to ground yourself in that direction. Not just to feel it, but to gently commit to it. Dear one, clarity becomes stronger when it is acknowledged. Alignment deepens when it is chosen, even in small ways. You don't have to make a grand declaration. You don't have to prove anything. But there is something powerful about saying, yes, I'm stepping into this. Because when you stay silent within yourself, it's easy to drift back into old patterns. Into doubt. Into hesitation. But when you acknowledge what you've received, even in a simple way, you anchor it. So if something in this message has resonated with you, if you felt that shift from confusion into calm, you can express it. You can quietly type Amen, or I receive, or I am ready. Not for anyone else, but as a moment of agreement within your own spirit. And here's something else to understand: you are not meant to walk through this kind of clarity alone. There is strength in connection. There is reinforcement in being part of a space where reminders like this reach you consistently. Because life doesn't stop. Distractions don't disappear overnight. And staying aligned is not about one moment, it's about continuity. When you remain connected to messages that bring you back to clarity, you begin to stay steady more often. You don't fall as deeply into confusion. You recognize patterns sooner. You return to peace faster. That's the difference between isolation and shared strength. Isolation makes everything feel heavier. It makes you question yourself more. It makes clarity feel temporary. But connection reminds you. It reinforces what you already know. It keeps you grounded when things around you shift. So if this message has spoken to you, you can take a small step to stay connected. You can subscribe, not out of obligation, but as a way of saying, I want to stay aligned. I want to keep receiving what brings me back to peace. And if you know someone who has been feeling the same confusion, the same heaviness, the same quiet uncertainty, share this with them. Not to convince them, not to force anything, but simply to offer them a moment of clarity the way it was offered to you. Because sometimes, the very thing that helps you is meant to flow through you to someone else. This is how light moves. Quietly. Gently. Intentionally. And as you take these small steps, acknowledging, staying connected, sharing, you are not just receiving clarity. You are strengthening it within your life. So pause again for a moment. Feel where you are now compared to where you started. There is more calm. More understanding. More steadiness than before. That is not accidental. And carry that forward with you, because in this final part, we're going to bring everything together, gently, clearly, and leave you with one lasting sense of peace and direction you can return to whenever you need it. Now that you've walked through this entire moment, just pause, and notice how different everything feels compared to when you first arrived here. Dear one, you began with a sense that something was off, something unseen, but now you understand. What tried to harm your future was intercepted. What felt like delay was protection. What seemed confusing has been gently brought into clarity. You've seen the pattern. You've felt the shift. You've moved from uncertainty into awareness, from tension into stillness, from questioning into quiet understanding. And more than anything, you've been reminded of who you are. You are not unprotected. You are not overlooked. You are not walking through life without guidance. You are covered. You are seen. You are being led. Carry that with you. As you leave this moment, don't rush back into noise. Take this calm with you into whatever comes next. Let your decisions come from clarity, not pressure. Let your responses come from peace, not urgency. You don't need to force anything anymore. What is aligned will meet you. And now, receive this final blessing. May peace settle over your mind, steady and unshaken. May clarity continue to rise within you, gently and consistently. May every step you take be guided, even when you cannot see the full path ahead. And may you remain protected in ways you may not always notice, but will always benefit from. Let there be calm where there was once confusion. Let there be confidence where there was once hesitation. Let there be quiet assurance that you are moving exactly as you need to. You are safe to move forward. And stay attentive, dear one, because more clarity is unfolding. Not all at once, not in a rush, but in the right moments, in the right way. Just keep listening.